Hi, and welcome. And real quick, the Podcast Engineering School, the online training program, is starting on April 4th. Go to the website for all the details, podcastengineeringschool.com. That's right, it's going to be online training. Barry, you like online training, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I thought so. So check out the website for more information, podcastengineeringschool.com. You must have leaned on your smartphone with your elbow and accidentally hit play on this show. This is the Podcast Engineering Show. This is session 43. Here's my in-house band. Let's do it. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. I try not to be like radio guy. See, I just squeaked my voice or whatever. Yeah, I'm 14 years old. Anyway, welcome to the show. My name's Chris Curran. You are listening to the Podcast Engineering Show. I produce podcasts for a lot of companies and a lot of authors, including some big ones. And every week on this show, we bring you podcast production techniques on a silver platter. We really talk shop. I interview producers, experts, people who are producing podcasts. We go through their whole setup. And really, if you implement the best of what you learn here, not only will your podcast sound a lot better, but you'll speed up your production time as well. I mean, think about that. Jason, right? How about saving some time with production, dude?
I'm all about saving time with production.
I mean, seriously. It's like either have some fun and produce podcasts or be stuck in your basement with your head in your laptop for 9 hours an episode. It's please, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I'll pass on that.
Barry, the maintenance guy, of course, is here with me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Barry, you've heard some of Jason's shows, and Jason. Do you hear that? You've heard some of Jason's shows. I'm going to tell you what they are in a second, but what did you hear when you listened to Jason's shows?
And they were cussing up a storm.
Oh.
Profanities left, profanities right.
Really? Wow, I didn't know he used colorful language.
Every second word was a F word.
Oh, geez. I don't know. I actually, Barry, I don't think you've listened to Jason's shows. Anyway, I'm going to introduce Jason in a second, but you heard before I came in and announced the episode that the Podcast Engineering School, that's right, is launching. Go to the website for all the details for this awesome program that we're having in April. podcastengineeringschool.com is the website, podcastengineeringschool.com. And also, in a few weeks, I'll be in Orlando at Podfest Multimedia Expo. That's right, go to podfest.us. This is an awesome one. Like, I always go to Podcast Movement, which is basically the big event in podcasting. Jason, you go to Podcast Movement?
I was there for the award show, and that was pretty much it this year.
Okay. That's right. You got to saunter on stage and accept the award.
No, I wish. No.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just sitting there in the audience having my beer going, yeah, maybe next year.
All right. So Podfest is a smaller event. It's in Florida. This year it's in Orlando, but it's really well done. Chris and Katie Kremitzos, they put on a great event. A lot of cool speakers. I'm speaking, and I'm going to have a little meetup for the Podcast Engineering Show listeners. So if you do show up there, we can hang out. I think me and some other guys got like this presidential suite thing, so we'll see what mayhem ensues. And also Lexington, Kentucky, April 21st and 22nd. It's the podcasting course. It's designed for podcasters in medical education. If you know anyone in medical education or the medical field, anything related to that, and they're at all interested in podcasting, send them to thepodcastingcourse.com. And of course, all these links will be in the show notes because, you know, I know you hear this, but you don't actually always register the exact URL. So anyway, you can go to the show notes. So Jason DeFillippo is my guest. What's up, dude?
What's up?
Yeah.
What's shaking?
Dude, producer of the Art of Charm podcast. How cool is that, dude? Seriously.
It's a job.
You're
It's a
also the
job.
co-host of the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast.
I think that's what Barry was listening to because we definitely are.
Really?
We're salty on there. We're tech news for adults.
Okay.
You know? We call it like it is, and you don't want to listen to our show with the kids in the room.
That reminds me, I used to do a show with this guy, Doc South, and we called it The Geezer and the Geek. And
There you go.
because he was an old dude, and I'm sort of a geek. And like he's old. Like he was like he's not on much. He wasn't on much social media. So all these new things he had no clue about. So we would talk about it. It was an interesting show. But you know how it is with shows. When you're a podcaster or a producer, you think of like every day you think of at least 7 or 8 good ideas for shows, and you're like, oh, we should do a show about sliding glass doors. Seriously, that would be a great podcast. And
then you think, who's going to edit that? Oh, I got to edit it now. Okay, that wasn't such a great idea.
That's it. I'm trying to think, who can I get to edit this? All right, you're a podcast editor. You produce and edit shows for a lot of people, and you also have another show which is called Does It Have Legs?
Yep, that one we take a movie that's at least 20 years old and one of us hasn't seen it and watch it and figure out if it's still worth watching.
That is interesting. It's so interesting what holds up over time.
We were so surprised on many of our shows. Some of them were just like, man, this was the greatest, movie of my youth. And you watch it again and you just can't wait to finish it.
Right. Before we get into the speed round, we're going to get into the speed round. And by the way, if you're listening to this, on this show, I talk to a lot of podcast producers and experts. Jason is up there. So this is going to be awesome. And we're going to do the speed round. We're going to go through his whole production workflow and all his equipment really quick. Then we're going to pick through it. But I do have to ask you, does Braveheart hold up?
Haven't watched that one yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure that one is... I'm on the fence with that one. But my usual co-host is not a big fan of like violence and war movies, so I need to find a guest host to come in to do that one.
All right. I have a friend. My friend's name is Coot. Me and him used to love that movie, Braveheart. That was like the standard for us back then. It was like, well, it's no. We'd watch another movie and then we'd be like, nah, it's no Braveheart.
Yeah, problem is you have the specter of Mel Gibson watching that movie now, he may have tainted it.
Oh my God, you're right there. So let's do this. Let's get into your workflow. So this is how the speed round works. I mean, literally quickly, like within 60 seconds or maybe 90 seconds, just. Well, see, you do so much productions in so many different ways. It might take a little longer, but yeah, why don't you just give us the quick overview, whatever that means to you?
Give me some starting context. Where do we start from? Because I can go from inception to posting. So
yeah, that's what I want. I want literally you're about to record an episode, so it's you sitting in your studio. What mic are you talking into? Where's it going? How's it flow? What are you recording it on? Then what software do you mix it in? And then.
Okay, so you don't want pre-production because pre-production is a whole other ball of wax then.
Well, what's your let's do pre-production. Come on.
Well, because with the Art of Charm, we have, high-level guests on there, so it can take us, months and weeks or months to get a guest on, and then when we get the guest on, we have to read the books, we have to take notes. Right. Everybody's on the same page. We have to, spec out the shows. That can take, we'll put in 20, 30, 40 hours on a guest just to get prepped for one of those shows.
Yeah.
We have shared notes for those.
That's awesome. So here's the thing about this show is like all that stuff. I mean, it's all like you have to do it. It's awesome. It's a lot of work and it's really important, but we're not going to get into any of that stuff. Like we're all about the audio engineering side of podcasting. So
hey, it works for me. I'd rather not talk about office errata. Yeah,
like marketing, listeners, download, like nothing. We don't care about any of that on the show. So I'm just literally about like the quality of the sound, man, like the final product and the mics and everything, all the specs. We want to get deep here. This show is not for podcasters, actually. Of course, some podcasters listen and they learn a lot. This show is for podcast producers. So this is for people who are out there producing shows and like they're into the audio. They're maybe buying some plugins. They're using software. They like it. They're into audio.
All right. So Art of Charm on our side. I'm pretty much the nexus of the show. So I've got a PreSonus 192 in my rack. What is it? It's an SKB mobile rack.
Oh, yeah.
It's monstrous.
Okay.
So I've got that with a Furman power conditioner, but under that I've got 2 rack-mounted Mac Minis which work as my Skype machines. So the host calls into one machine, the guest calls into the other. I've got another one on deck if we need to do another guest. And we've got multiple Macs around here. So I can route, up to 5 guests through this thing. But the format of that show is just me, the host, and a guest. So Everything gets run through Skype on those machines, running Ecamm call recorder that automatically records on the host's machine and both of my machines. So that's our first round of backups.
Right.
The host is running an Apollo 8 on his side.
Oh.
So he's routing through the Apollo 8. Both of us have Zoom H6s into our interfaces, so we have another level of backup. And Jordan is running on he's on an RE20. I'm on RE27 NDs. And for the guests, we always send them, when we can, we send them AT2005s.
Okay. AT2005 you send to the guests. So you have an RE20?
I have an RE27 ND. Jordan has an RE20.
27 MD.
ND.
ND, okay.
Neodymium magnets. It's got the fancy magnets in it.
Oh,
it's the shiny one.
And you send the guest the ATR 2005.
AT2005s. Yeah. The ATRs are the 2100s.
Got it. AT 2005. I'm writing this down because I want to ask you about it later. All right.
Sure.
So keep going. You start recording.
Yeah, I'm recording into Logic. Jordan is recording into Logic, and we will have the guest record into Zencastr, just so we can get a local copy. We found that so far it's been the easiest for the authors, or just the caliber of people we have on the show. It makes it super fast and easy. And if we have people that are super tech or super low tech, anybody can figure it out at this point. So that gives us our local recordings, which has saved our bacon a couple times, thanks to the loveliness of Skype. Yay!
Yes.
And then that's pretty much our work through from start to finish recording. And then we put everything to Dropbox, all the disparate tracks. They come to me. I put them together, get everything lined up, and then send all of that stuff off to our editor in Europe, who then does all of the editing from our notes, then mastering. He uses Pro Tools for all of his mastering. He's a studio engineer and does a great job, and he keeps all of our episodes sounding as close to the same as possible, because we have, when you have different quality guests, like the audio quality on the guest, you still want to match it with the host as closely as possible, but still keeping the fidelity on the host as high as possible. So there's always that balance that has to be maintained, and he's really good at that.
Nice.
Then we get it back and we shove it up to Libsyn and go on our merry way and get ready for the next one.
Right? Oh, this is awesome. I love the whole idea that you have a bunch of, or a couple, or 2 or 3 Mac Minis that you can bring people in and different signals through different computers completely. And the PreSonus 192, that's your mixer?
Yeah, that's the interface. So
it's the interface. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm doing mix minuses out to the 2 Mac Minis. The nice thing about the Mac Mini, it's the last remaining Mac that has a microphone input. Because you'll see a lot of people using iMics to get the audio input going in through the USB, and those things they're just noisy. I've never had good luck with it. We've also tried the tractors, the little tractor interfaces, but we just get line noise off of those. I found with the Mac Minis, it's a little more pricey, but you get a Mac Mini and get an aftermarket SSD, those things just chug right along, especially if all you're running is Skype and call recorder.
Right.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, having dedicated computers like that where you're only running Skype and the call recorder, or like I'm running Cast on one of my other computers, that's awesome. And
yeah, I never ever want to run the actual connection software on the Mac that's doing the recording. There's just too many problems with switching the interfaces. It's like, okay, I've got, if I got to use my laptop to get the audio in, and I'm using like iMics or something like that, and I'm in Logic, I'm using something else. There's just too many points of failure. I try and get rid of as many points of failure in the recordings as possible.
I think this is an area that can be vastly improved in not only podcasting, but any audio recording over the internet, group calls, panel discussions, whatever it is. You can't do it all in one computer. Someone's going to make a computer that is dedicated and does all this. Do you think that'll happen, Jason?
I don't think so. Just because of the way the audio interface routes through the system, I think you're going to have a lot of problems. Even if somebody gets, like a PC with 7 sound cards in it and you're moving stuff around, it's just, then you still have the SPOF is still your PC. I would rather have multiple machines, spread out, because then if one machine goes down, I can just swap another one out with it, just have backups. Because the computers are cheap enough nowadays. If you're doing a really professional show where you're making money on it, you spend on your infrastructure. That's the way it's got to be. And I'm actually with my editing and podcast production for other clients, people can just, all they have to do is call me. I'm like, okay, here's the same setup that we use for the Art of Charm, but I can run any show through this type of setup. So as an independent contractor with this setup, I'm like, future-proofed for quite some time. So I would much rather have multiple machines just to, unburden the load, make sure everything's doing its job and just its job. And that way, it's just safer. You lose less recordings that way, and it's always the nightmares. You're going to lose a recording, especially on a guest that you took a month to book, and they've got only that hour for the next 3 months. It's like, you got to get that. You got to get that show.
Totally. I totally agree. I mean, look, that's why I've similar setup to you. I have a bunch of satellite computers, and I use a mixer, a real mixer, which mine is a Mackie 1642.
I used to use a PreSonus 1642. That was my first mixer that I used. And I just, after having, animals in the house that could just randomly walk by and hit a knob, it's like, let's just go software only. And the PreSonus 192 has basically everything that the 1642 had, but in a rack-mounted form factor, and it's just less headaches.
Right.
Except the dog has actually walked by the first week that I got her. She walked by and hit the power button with her nose because it was blue and shiny.
Hey, Barry's here again. He's still here. He's listening. Barry just sits here for the entire episode every time, by the way. But Barry, when you see Jason's dog hit a knob with his nose, what's your reaction? That's what I thought. All right. Barry, do you want to take the conversation anywhere else right now?
All right. First, the Incas.
All right, he wants to talk about the Incas and the Aztecs. All right, not really. So I think my comment was like, if everything was in one box, I'm thinking of not like, buy a PC or buy a Mac and load software on it. I'm talking about literally something that's like a computer. That's all it does is audio stuff. So like in your case, you have all the Mac Minis, you have your PreSonus 192, and you have, you're bringing different people in and you're routing mix minuses everywhere. Like, and I guess what I'm talking about is futuristic as well, because like put all that into one computer like thing, but it's only made to do that. Like, you know what I mean? It would be like, let's say a couple $1,000, $2,000-$3,000, you buy this unit that literally does all that. That would be kind of cool.
It would be amazing, but your market is going to be about 7 people that are going to go out and buy these things. So
come on. Jeez, you're right. You're absolutely right.
No, we could sit down over the weekend and shove a bunch of Raspberry Pis in a box and get them to run VoIP software, all segmented, all going through. We could do that. That's a doable thing. But the problem is, it's like, ain't nobody got time for that. I just want to go about my business. We were talking pre-show. It's like, do you really want to sit around in your basement and doing stuff? It's like, no, I want to get my show done and go have a life.
That's right. All right. So you use the RE27ND. So tell me about that. I mean, most people know about the RE20, which is actually what I use. And it's a standard broadcasting mic. It's, what is it, like $450? Out of the dynamic mics for broadcast and podcasting, it's one of the best ones, the RE20. So what's the RE27ND like?
This one came out after the RE20s, and they did change the internals on the RE20s. I can't remember how long ago it is. So if you get like a 20-year-old RE20, it's not the same as one you get today.
Right.
This one's a little crisper, and it's same form factor, exactly the same. I'm still using the same shock mount and basically a windscreen that you use for the RE20s. They're identical in form factor. And this one's shiny. But like I said, it's just got a little bit more pop to it. And if it was up to me when I started, I would have probably started with an RE20, but I got a deal on one. So then I just bought 3 of them for my studio. So I have the same mic for everybody.
Oh, you have 3 RE27s?
Yeah, I'm down to 2 now.
Okay.
I built out a studio in Los Angeles that I was going to start renting out. So I had a full setup with 3 RE27s. It was basically, you just walk in, sit down, record your podcast, get a file, and go.
Right.
It was beautiful. It was perfect. And pretty much the day after I got it completed, I moved to Chicago and broke it down.
Dude.
Yeah. And so this is my studio setup that we talked about with what we've got going on here. Before the 192, I was using, Jordan was recording everything on his Apollo 8 because he's in California, and we were never in the same city when we did any of these shows. So I had an Apollo Twin that I was using for my initial routing, and I still have that, and that's part of my road kit. So I've got a road kit with 2 RE27s, boom arms, the Apollo Twin, and it all fits in one single Pelican case. So you can get a studio, basically a studio setup with headphones, everything, headphone amplifier, all in one box that you can just go take anywhere.
Right.
And I love that thing. That is just whenever I do Does It Have Legs, I can go to anybody's house and we'll sit down, watch a movie, eat some popcorn, pull it out, 5-minute setup, do a show.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's a very expensive Pelican case, but it does get the job done.
Right? Yeah, that's expensive, but come on, if you're gonna do it right. The other thing about expensive gear is it really is like an investment. Like if you take care of your gear, it lasts a long time.
Oh, this stuff will last forever. It'll outlast me, that's for sure, because I am a grumpy old geek, and so.
All right, so then you got the Mac Minis running. Everything's coming into your PreSonus 192 interface.
Yeah, and in between the RE27, I've got Rolls mic switches, mute switches, the physical mute switches.
Oh, I don't know what that is. What is that?
Rolls, the MS111s, they're basically mic switches. You can put them on the ground and use your foot to turn them off and on, but they're basically cough buttons, but they're hardware cough buttons, so you don't get any signal interference. So anybody in the studio can turn off their mic. Like if I'm talking to you right now, and then I turn it back on, like you can tell I just went dark.
Yeah, you went dark.
So that's the whole point of it. So they're beautiful. They're a little pricey. They're like $70. But if you're in a studio where you don't want to have to hit a mute button on accident on Skype or something, if you're using XLR mics, I highly recommend these Rolls mute switches. They're great.
Right, MS111s. And how do you spell Rolls?
ROLLS, just like the buns.
Like the Rolls Royce.
Yep, and then that goes into a Cloudlifter, which then goes into the 192.
Yeah, so the Cloudlifter, we've talked about that on the show before, but how much clean gain does that add?
About 25 dB.
Right, which is really helpful.
Yeah, it is. I don't really need it with the 192s. The preamps on them are pretty top notch, but I am close to maxed out, and I wanted to give it a shot because I like gear. So I went out and picked one up just to give it a shot, and I knocked between 23 and 24 dB off my signal.
Right.
Which fixes the noise floor on a lot of stuff. So it's a worthwhile investment, especially if you're running some mics that just have to get more gain out of it. It works. It's a genius device. It's just throw some phantom power at it and boom, instant gain.
All right, it needs phantom. All right, so you got the RE27ND going straight into the Rolls, the cough button switch, and straight into the Cloudlifter, and only then do you go into a preamp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the Cloudlifter is kind of a preamp, but then it goes straight into the 192, and the 192 it preamps on the 192.
Right. Cool. All right. Now Jordan is the host of.
He's the host of The Art of Charm. Yes.
Yeah, and he uses an Apollo 8. So tell us about the Apollo 8, because I just started looking into the Universal Audio hardware and plugins, and I saw some of the prices, and I was like. I already have the Scarlett 18i20. Like I already have a setup. Like I don't need any more. But tell us about the Apollo 8 and that whole, and really what it does.
The lovely thing about the Universal Audio stuff and the Apollos, the 8, the Twin that I'm using, the digital signal processors on the DSPs let you run the plugins on board and in real time. The problem with that is you will spend a fortune on plugins because it is so much fun to play with it. The PreSonus is just straight audio. It's got compressors and gates and EQ on it, but then that's it. But with the Apollos, you run the plugins right on there, and they've got beautiful preamps. I mean, if you can afford it, if you have the money, if you have the means, I highly recommend you get one.
Right.
From my Ferris Bueller quotes there. But yeah, they're beautiful pieces of art, and they're beautifully made. These things are tanks.
So it's an audio interface which has mic pre's and inputs, and it also on board has processors which run plugins. So basically, normally plugins run on the computer that you're on, and it takes up CPU power. But the beautiful thing about the Universal Audio Apollo stuff is what you're saying is that it runs the plugins on the unit itself, so it takes the load off of your computer.
Yeah, and it does it in real time. I mean, like, in Logic or wherever you're running your plugins, you can run them in post, and you have the power of your computer behind it, but it's not real time,
That's the thing about the Apollo. I just learned this too from Mark Johansson, who was talking to me, because he has I think he has an Apollo 8.
Yeah, he's got one too.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know Mark Johansson? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool.
I bought an RE27 from him.
Oh, okay, cool. So he was telling me, he was explaining that some of the Universal Audio plugins that can run on the Apollos, they're mic pre emulators. So like you can plug a mic cable into the Apollo and you can say, oh, I want the mic preamp to be an old Neve 1073.
Yep, absolutely.
And you get the color and the quality of a vintage mic pre. And that has to be in real time because you're recording it. The mic signal's flowing right through. It has to be real time.
Oh yeah, and the interface is the original interface from the actual unit. So that makes it kind of cool because you're sitting there, twiddling knobs and everything. They're gorgeous. They're well done, but they are expensive.
Yeah, I think I was looking. So I have a Scarlett 18i20, which an audio interface, which has 8 mic inputs and a ton of line inputs too. So if I wanted 8 mic inputs with an Apollo, I think I'd have to go with the Apollo 16, and I think that was like
the 8 has 8 inputs.
Oh, mic inputs, XLR?
Yeah, it has 8 mic inputs. It's pretty much the same thing as my 192. It's got 2 on the front, 6 on the back.
Oh, the Apollo 8. Okay, and what is the Apollo 8? Like $3,000 or something?
It's $2,000. Yeah, it's about I think it's $19.99 right now, or about $2,100-ish.
Right, and then of course, like you said, you got to get a bunch of plugins.
Yeah, they're smart enough to give you like $500 worth of free plugins when you buy it. So you can load up. You can load up on a bunch, and there's some that come with it, like the base ones. But yeah, they're all hardware keyed. So if I wanted to use all the money that I spent on the Apollo plugins, if I wanted to use them, say in Logic, then I'd have to go and find my twin, pull it out, and plug it in because it has to be keyed to the hardware, which is a pain in the butt. But with the Apollo plugins, they are gorgeous, they're beautiful, and just be prepared to spend a lot of money because they're like potato chips. You can't have just one.
Yeah, you start surfing the plugins, you're like, oh, that's awesome, that's awesome. And the danger is like you see a plugin you want the first time you see it, and you're like, oh, I want that, but you know what? I'm gonna use my willpower. I'm not gonna buy that right now. And then like 2 days later at like 1 a.m, you're like, I'm just gonna get it. And you just buy it.
Going back to Mark Johansson, if anybody has an Apollo or wants to get one and is really into the plugins, join his Facebook group because he posts all the deals on all the plugins. Whenever I don't know how he does it. Whenever anything goes on sale, he's got a link to it.
That's right. That's Podcast Gear Group.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah. Mark Johansson. Okay. So here's the thing with the Apollo 8. So you're using the PreSonus 192 interface, and you're within the PreSonus 192, you're routing your mix minuses, right? In the software.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in hardware. Well, I've got a bunch of mixes in the Universal Control software that it comes with, but I've got, if I opened up the back of this thing, there's patch cables everywhere. So, but yeah, there are mixes. I've got mixes for every computer that just pull out their voice and mixes everybody else's voices in, plus the soundboard. So if for some reason we need sound effects, we've got those as well.
Got it. And the Apollo 8 or the Apollo stuff, I assume you can do the same thing, like route.
Identical. Absolutely identical, yeah.
You can do mix minuses. All right, and you also back up to a Zoom H6.
Yeah, we've got multiple Zoom H6s just because, and we use one of the, just one of the main outputs for that, just, 1/4 inch in. For mine, for a long time, I was running individual tracks on the H6, but turns out we've used out of I think I've done 250 shows with the Art of Charm and about 190 on Grumpy Old Geeks. Out of all of those, we have used the Zoom backups absolutely 0 times.
Right. That's good.
We've got enough software backups in between that it's like if something goes catastrophically wrong, we've got something else, to catch it. But
got it.
Usually the single point of failure on that is Skype. So
right. Okay, so then you record into Logic. Both you and Jordan each record into Logic. Yeah, separately.
Yeah, we're both using Logic. We found that Audacity is just too damn buggy for what we're doing, and it's just ugly. I honestly, I can't use ugly software. It might make me a snob. I don't care. I'm looking at this stuff for 10, 12, 14 hours a day. I need pretty interfaces. So, like, that's why I like Logic. That's why I don't like Audition. Audition is, in my opinion, ugly. So
Audition. All right, Adobe Audition, right? I've never tried that. I've seen it I've seen it in person on a computer, but I've never played with it at all.
Yeah, I got the demo and played with it because my friend needed some help. He bought a new PreSonus interface, like one of those hybrid mixing board interfaces, and he was having some problems with routing. And I'm like, it's all the same stuff. It just depends on the interface. So I grabbed a copy of Audition. I was just like, man, it's like a punch in the gut.
Right. A lot of podcasters love that, though, because I think some of the native effects and the processing within Adobe Audition, it's handy. Like, they make it handy for like novices or mid-level, engineers and producers.
Yeah, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it.
I mean, I use Reaper just because it's really small footprint and it's just clean. It's just like nothing. It's just like I just record my tracks and have plugins and mix it. But yeah, I mean, Audacity is like that's like the free thing that someone who knows absolutely nothing, that's the first thing they use. But and you could still use it forever, right? We know people who use it for shows that are probably popular as well. So it's something you can use, but I hear you on the ugly factor.
Yeah. No, and when I first started out, I was using a little app on the Mac called Sound Studio that was like $36. It's just a simple waveform editor. I had to dump it because you could only record on 2 tracks. So as soon as I started bringing in more guests, I had to, up that game.
Right.
But even just a simple little waveform editor like that was just so much better than that beast.
Right.
And we lost several shows just in testing it because there were sample rate conversion issues. Like if one thing was set to 41.4 or 44.1 and then 48K on the interface, and just you get these clicks, and it would be completely transparent in Audacity. And we'd just have to dump the recording and do it again. Right. And it kept resetting all of our sample rates in different times. And so it was just, spend the money. We're professionals. We're trying to, we make a living off of this. So we pay for our tools, and, Pro Tools, also a good buy. I have to learn it this year for a client that I just picked up. But I'm fine with that. As long as there's like 7 tools that you need when you're doing podcast editing. There's really not a lot that goes into it. So exactly. You'll learn it quick. You'll learn it, and it'll just take you a little time to get up to speed. And I really mean get up to speed, like to know where everything is and be able to do your thing quickly as you normally do on Logic right now. I use a ShuttlePRO V2, one by Contour, the little shuttle for my left hand, and those buttons map over to basically any app that I'm going to use, and that way you have muscle memory between apps, which is great when you're doing your editing. Oh, that's really cool. I've never actually used one of those. Best $100 I've spent this year. Really? That and the Logitech MX Master Mouse. Those two, basically when I'm editing a show, my hands don't leave the desk. I don't have to do key commands unless I'm importing something, but everything, my arms don't have to move. So I was a programmer for 22 years, so I'm very attuned to RSIs. So I don't want my arms to move if I don't have to. When I was doing 10-hour editing sessions in Logic, by the end of the night I'd have to put ice on my forearms because my arms are moving so much with key commands. I got the ShuttlePRO, I got the MX Master. Between the two of those, you can do almost everything. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. The MX Master is a mouse. Yeah. So I got the MX Master in my right hand. I got the ShuttlePRO V2 in my left hand. And I never touch the keyboard. As soon as I open a show and I start editing, once I get all of the assets put into the show, because you still have to do a key command to import the audio in Logic and get all your assets set up. Once that process starts, I never touch the keyboard. That's so cool. All right, so you assemble everything in Logic. You get Jordan's files, you get your files, you get the guest files from Zencastr, right? And by the way, in Zencastr, do you record at the wave quality or MP3? MP3, yeah, because the wave quality, I've used Zencastr a few times. I actually prefer Cast, which is what you and I are connected on now. But Zencastr, you could choose Wave, which obviously records the guests at a higher resolution. But then what happens after the session's over, I think it can take like
quite a bit of time to upload, so the guest has to like leave everything open and not touch anything for like 5 or 10 minutes, which doesn't seem like much, but sometimes that's a lot to ask.
Invariably, they will close that tab and you will not get your wave.
Oh, yeah, not good.
I'm telling you, it is never not once happened. I know I had some double negatives in there, but every single time they close the damn window and that's it.
All right, so you assemble everything in Logic. Now, do you mix it? Like, do you add effects and do you process it and everything and then sort of mix it down and then send it to your editor? How does that work?
I basically just line everything up and do some basic cuts for content. And 90% of the time, I don't even have to do that. We're so on the same page because he's been with us for. He started before I got there with the Art of Charm, so he's been around forever. His name's Jason Sanderson, awesome editor. Love that kid. And we're so on the same page. I almost never have to check his work. But when there are shows that, like, if the guest goes off on a tangent that we then talk off the air about, hey, maybe we should cut that, or if the guest comes back with a, some kind of ask, I'll go in and just to make sure that it doesn't get out of my hands. Right. So, just so it doesn't accidentally end up out in the world.
Right. So you just go in, you cut it out yourself so that you know that when you pass it along, it's definitely not there.
Yeah, and if there are some shows that are just like super difficult and I don't want to burden them with, because you get some guests that are just like, you have to Frankenstein that show together to make it, listenable. That's just every show. When you have a guest that's not, media friendly or media ready, sometimes you gotta massage it. You gotta give them a little massage to make it really palatable for the audience.
Right. I hear you. So, all right. So then you give the Logic session with all the pieces and parts. You give it to your guy.
Export simple waves. Absolutely simple waves, and then he brings them all into Pro Tools.
Okay, and then what does he do to the audio, to everything?
He does about 1,000 different things. There was at one point where he was actually running it through hardware compressors and things like that. We're like, this might be a little overkill, bud.
Awesome.
This is a podcast. People are listening to it on their earbuds in their car or wherever. You can tone it back. We're not we're not going for platinum album quality here. So he does everything. Just plugins in Pro Tools and just uses his ear. He's got a great ear, so he gets everything down. Doesn't use any other tools that I know of, like Ophonic or Levelator, stuff like that. He just does it all by ear and in the tool.
Right. Yeah, so he's denoising and gating and compressing, EQing, everything.
Yeah, for our standard 45-minute shows, he'll spend about 9 hours on it.
Really?
Yeah, he's that much of a perfectionist, so kudos to him. Glad we don't pay him hourly.
Really? Wow. What does he do for 9 hours? I might have
he just goes back and he'll do a clean listen, then he'll go back and fix it, do another listen. He'll listen to the whole show a couple times and then just, make sure it is up to his standard. He's got very high standards, which I appreciate. And somebody I work with, we're all perfectionists. So we have to have it to where we're happy with it. We don't want anything out that we can't go back to 2 years later and not be proud of.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big thing about doing the audio right, is that you do it right. And then the listeners love it and you love it. And then, like you said, 2 years later, you can listen to it and say, oh, that's awesome. Where there's so many... Every time I meet, anyone, like I just met these two people who have a shop in the local mall. They sell tea and like lotions and soap. They make everything themselves. And I'm like, hey, do you listen to podcasts? They're like, yeah, we listen to some podcasts. And their one favorite show, they're like, yeah, listen to this show. It's a great show. But listen to the more recent episodes, because if you go back about 30 or 40 episodes, the sound is horrendous and you literally can't listen to it. And I'm like, man, that would suck to have a show where you have to tell people, hey, just listen to the new ones. Don't listen to the old ones.
Well, I've got a show like that. It's called Grumpy Old Geeks. We don't want anybody to listen to that. There's a reason that I'm a perfectionist now, is because I cut my teeth doing that show. And after about episode 75, I finally got my legs under me. So
that's good. Oh, we all go through that. Absolutely.
That's the thing. And once you get hit a certain point, then it's just all becomes natural and you have an ear for it. But we started out with me and my co-host sitting on a desk with many cocktails, nothing on the desk. And this is like a shiny white, very hard desk. I had a Blue Yeti, or actually, no, I gave my co-host the Blue Yeti. I had an Apogee mic, both condenser mics, right, in a cavernous room, hardwood floors, and it sounded terrible.
Awesome.
It was terrible, and we were terrible because we hadn't spoken on the mic for, ever.
Right.
We'd never done it. I mean, I took radio in high school. That was pretty much the last time I'd spoken on a microphone. So we did 3 shows and then threw them all away. Because the first show, I went back and I did all the edit points. And I'm like, here, cut this here, cut that there. And there were 76 edit points in the first episode. I'm like, how about we just do this again? So for a month, we just went, had a few drinks, did the shows, and then got it to the point where we were embarrassed, but we weren't as embarrassed as, It would be more embarrassing not to put it out because we told everybody it was coming.
Right.
So you have to have that time constraint on yourself. You have to have that pressure to get a show out, but it's always good to get some practice before you run that first one out the door.
Totally. Let's talk about your road kit. So tell us what's in your road kit again. I love this idea. And a few episodes ago, I interviewed Ralph and Carolyn Rivera. He has a different type of road kit.
Oh, it's beautiful. I saw the pictures. That thing is fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's heavy though, dude. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Him and I carried it from the garage. Like we had to go up 2 steps, 3 steps. And look, it wasn't like heavy, but it was like, you had to grab it with both hands and like be real careful.
Yeah, well, technically my main system is a road setup because it's in the SKB. It has wheels on it. I can cover it up and take it down, but I assembled it upstairs in my studio.
Right.
So when I do have to take it downstairs, I need to have 3 friends probably come over and help me move it.
Yeah.
But I love this case because all the cables are hidden. Everything is inside. It's fantastic.
Nice.
But yeah, my one person case, 2 Rode PSA 1s, 2 shock mounts for the RE27s, and you have since you have an RE20, you have the same shock mount. These things fold down flat. Once you take them apart, they just fold totally flat. All Megami cables, cough buttons. Keep the cough buttons with me. I don't take the Cloudlifter on those because you don't need it with the twins. 2 sets of headphones, headphone preamp, and a bunch of cables. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in there. And the H6 is a backup recorder. I think that's about it.
Right. You mentioned the Apollo is in your road kit too, right?
Yeah, the Apollo Twin is small. It's very small.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just got 2 XLR inputs on it, and I'll send you a picture of it for the show notes. It's tiny.
And then you record into the H6, so you don't no computer.
No. Well, I still bring my laptop. My laptop's in my backpack.
Okay,
but I still use Logic out of the Twin.
Got it. And the mics are the Rhodes?
No, the
the RE27s.
Yeah, the RE27s.
Oh, okay. What's the Rode PSA 1?
It's the boom arm.
Oh, the boom arm.
I take booms with me. I don't want to be sitting there with people who are, don't know how to do a show and they're like banging on the table. I'd take boom arms with me.
That's awesome, dude.
Yeah. And you can clamp these things to anything. We've used like those TV trays,
Yeah.
And just got every heavy book that they had in the house, big dictionaries to counterweight it. You can make it work wherever you go. You just got to MacGyver that just a bit.
That's so cool. So are you mixing down anything in Logic for your other shows, the Grumpy Old Geeks, or does it
Grumpy
have
Old Geeks is 100% done in Logic. Yeah.
Okay, and you do it. So what kind of, and I'm assuming the recording of it is similar?
Yeah, we use the same setup because that's actually a 3-guest show. So it's me, my co-host Brian Schulmeister, and we have this guy Dave Bittner, who's another podcaster from a podcast called the Cyberwire Podcast. It's a cybersecurity podcast. So he calls in for one segment with the 2 of us. So that uses the full range of the gear that I've got. All of that is cut and edited in Logic. I've got a library of all of our sound effects and bumpers because we have segments of the show with musical beds in between. And so all of that stuff is done in Logic, and we just did episode 190, and normally that show will take about an hour and 45 minutes to record, 20 minutes to cut, and then it's off to publishing. So we've been doing it long enough where we have almost 0 edits in that show now.
Okay, cool. And so how do you process? Do you process each voice very much, or do you already have the plug-in presets set up for those?
Yeah, for those, it's real basic. I use the Apple. Here, let me pull it up right now.
Cool.
I can't because we're recording. But basically, it's the Apple Dynamics processor plugin, and I do a medium gate on both guests, and then I use the Isotope Dialogue Denoiser, that plugin.
Okay.
And that's it. And then once it's done, I bounce everything out of Logic, then run it through Ophonic. I don't use the high pass filter. I just use the denoiser and the the loudness compensation at -16. And then once that's out, I pull it into Sound Studio, put in all my ID3 tags, show art and everything, and then bounce it out to MP3, throw it up to Libsyn.
Nice. Sound Studio. That's a standalone program?
No, yeah, that's the one I mentioned before, that little waveform editor. It's like $30.
Oh, okay.
But it's got a great little ID3 tag editor in it. It's a nice little like Swiss Army knife for waveform editing. I love it.
I like that. I use SoundForge Pro in the same way. It's just a little stereo editor. You can clip things. You can do, it's like a Swiss Army knife, and then you can just render your MP3 out of there.
Yep, that's all. It's all it's for. It's like I don't want to have to deal with like the massiveness of Logic to do just these little basic things. So
yeah, that's exactly why I use SoundForge Pro. I don't use it all the time, but I used to use it more when I used to actually do my mastering in SoundForge Pro. So I would do multi-band compressor and a limiter and the leveling. But now
I used to do all that out of Sound Studio too, but now it's just like, okay, that's over there. I've moved on from Sound Studio. I'm sorry, I've grown up and moved on. You stay over there. I'll come visit you once or twice a week and give you a little pat on the head and make sure you're still loved. But yeah, I'm going to be over here with my new Mistress Logic. So
question, when you do Does It Have Legs? When you bring your Rode kit out and you set up, the boom arm on someone's TV tray with the stack of books and record, what kind of process, how do you process those voices?
Exactly the same way as I would Grumpy Old Geeks. It's that same little plugin setup works great for just about everything, and I know the locations I'm generally going to be in with that, and so I've kind of profiled them beforehand, and we just kind of wing it as it goes. And nowadays, some of the guests are on Skype, so that's the other workflow. But yeah, and for the most part, if you can just that's another nice thing about the booms is if you're using something like with a little tripod, like one of the ATR 2100s or 2005s with a tripod,
yeah,
you're asking the guest to have better mic technique than they generally would have because they're not broadcasters. So with the boom arms, you shove that thing right in their gob. And you say, don't move. And I line it up. So that's the nice thing about these booms with the RE27s and the RE20s. They have a giant hole in the middle of it. So I line up that hole so they can see me right through the hole. And then they look at me the whole time. They're not moving around.
Right.
So that's another thing. You just take out a variable. I was a software engineer for 22 years. I'm all about efficiency and removing points of failure and making everything work to the best of the ability of the user. So
totally. Well, this is awesome, man. I mean, this is like, I'm going to re-listen to this episode myself just to hear all the details again and let it all sink in. I really like your whole setup, and it's awesome, dude. So I'm really happy you could come on and explain all this to us. Thanks.
No, my pleasure. I feel like I'm leaving out a completely another setup, but it's it's escaping me at the moment. I'm sure I have another rig around here to do something else somewhere that I forgot about.
Well, so we talked about Does It Have Legs? We talked about Grumpy Old Geeks and the Art of Charm.
You know what? That's what I was going to tell you. Does It Have Legs originally started because when I was coming up and learning how to do podcasting, and this I recommend for everybody, I built that show because I wanted to learn how to do a 3-mic setup, and I had 3 Rode podcasters at that point. And I don't know if you've ever tried to do 3 USB mics into one computer.
No.
It's very difficult.
Okay.
So on the Mac, you have to use you have to do all these MIDI bridges and interface conjoining. It can be a pain, but I built that show to learn the technology. So if you really want to be a podcaster and not just not just be the guy who is podcasting about widgets, but if you want to learn the craft and how to do this stuff, put yourself in an uncomfortable situation where you have to learn the tech to get the result that you want. So I'm like, I even brought in a third co-host that was terrible, just so I had a third person on the mic so I could have 3 people talking and learn the technology to do it.
Yeah, that really
kind of
cool.
thing. Yeah, that just pushes you to the next level. So, to just always be learning about this stuff. But as soon as you get to the point where it works, stop. Because, how many gear groups are we in? And everybody's just talking about the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I don't care about mic reviews anymore because I found the mic that works. I found all the gear that works, and it works perfectly. So I don't have to go out and check the catalogs and say, oh, what's out this week? What's out that week? I have the perfect bulletproof gear that gets the job done. So once you get to that point, you can stop worrying about it and then worry about your interview technique, your mic technique, your workflows, the next set of stuff. And then once that's taken care of, work on something else and just just keep growing at it, but don't go down the rabbit hole of always needing the next shiny gadget.
Yeah, that's some wise advice right there. I would suggest if you get to a point where all your gear is awesome, like your gear, you have the setup, you love it, it works, you're not out gear shopping anymore. One area where you can go deeper into to improve the sound is the plugins, the audio processing, like compressors, EQs, and there's all kinds of funny little tricks I talked about a few weeks ago on the show as well, where you can, refine and become more of an artist on that level. If you're into that stuff, you don't have to go crazy into all that stuff. But
I think everybody should know that stuff. Know what a knee is. Know what the difference between hard and soft gates are, and that stuff. That's just part of the learning process.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's because it can be very confusing when you first start, and that's why it was nice when I got the PreSonus 1642. Is like I had to learn it.
Yeah,
it's like I have this piece of gear here. I don't know what all these knobs do. But I'm going to lock myself in my room for a weekend, and I'm not going to come out until I understand what a gate and a compressor is. And that was one weekend for me. And I sat down, I Googled the hell out of it. I read the manual 4 or 5 times, and then listened to a couple podcasts. And then by the time the weekend was done, I'm like, got it. I'm good. So anytime I go to a different setup, I know what it's always going to be like a different interface, but I know what the core technology means. And once you have that fundamental understanding of what the core technology means, that just ups your game and being more versatile, being able to bounce from setup to setup to setup. So if you go to somebody's house and they're like, oh, I'm a new podcaster, I've got this mixer that you've never seen, you still know what the core concepts are.
Exactly. That's what podcast engineering school is all about, my brother.
There you go. I'll take 10%, please.
There you go. Little commish. Jason DeFillippo, thank you so much, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and your website is, what's your website?
jpd.me.
jpd.me.
Yeah, .me.
Okay, cool. Well, this has been awesome. Again, I love your setup. I love what you're doing. The Art of Charm, Grumpy Old Geeks, Does It Have Legs? This is awesome. So if you're listening to this, go check out those shows. Listen to his sound quality. And listen to the shows too, obviously, especially Does It Have Legs? I haven't listened yet. I want to check that out. I'll wait for the Braveheart episode. All right. Well, listen, I hope you learned a lot from this episode. I know you did. And what happens is if you listen every week, it just seeps into your brain. You become a better podcast engineer. I'm happy to have you here. Thanks for listening. And as always, sound great.
Walk away from me where and you can't play that part so well. Why do you play it out on me now? You like to lose control where it's quite a feeling, isn't it? They're floating, drifting down now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react some angry. You change your attitude where you say I just don't get it now. You say your eyes so far away now. Give up on me where so change your game and give a break. Say I wouldn't understand now. You tell me that you found something better. How should I respond to that? Oh yeah, I say now it's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. What do you want me to say? It's a lie. I don't wanna hear it. You react so angry. I want you to know you were ever with me. So I've gone over all we've been through. Doesn't seem that long a time now. Things we did still hold that meaning. theories now where you're getting worked up on you now. You walk your way around.